Welcome to the Rugby Bits podcast. And you can just feel it, you can just see it in the distance. The Rugby World Cup is in only a few days, and we have now finished all of the warm-ups. Hopefully all of the stories are done, and suspensions, non-suspensions, bunker, no bunker, injuries, no injuries, all of that's done. Shaun, we are within tasting distance of the Rugby World Cup. And we're going to talk through Shaun, I'm just actually almost not fatigued of rugby, but I just want to get to the final event or the main event now.
Yeah, the last few weeks have almost felt Rugby World Cup-ish. You're right. We need a kind of downtime. We have a weekend off.
Yeah. Please, guys, don't take out the partners, the spouses, the friends, see your kids. Do as much as you can in this weekend, because after this, it's going to be full systems go. So, Shaun, today we're going to go through the test matches, the last week of test matches that happened in the warm-ups. We're going to start with, of course, the Springboks victory in their first and probably only Qatar Airways Cup match against New Zealand in Twickenham, winning 35 points to 7. I think Jean-Claude was talking about when he said he's coming back to South Africa that he's, as a young boy, he dreamt of winning the Qatar Airways Cup in Twickenham against New Zealand, right?
It makes sense. I mean, that's why they pumped all that money in and did it. But yeah, all jokes aside, you could see it in everyone's face. So they lifted it up. They were like, "We're only cheering because we have to." Like this, everyone is all as we are, all focused in one direction, and that's towards Paris on the 28th of October.
Sure. Yeah, let's, I think, get into the nitty gritty of it. It was obviously, as the scoreline suggests, it was, I mean, probably a very surprising game for most people. I don't think anyone saw, if people saw a Bok victory, sure, but I don't think anyone saw such a one-sided victory. It's officially New Zealand's biggest defeat that they've had in their history. And the Springboks just absolutely dominated and overturned the result that they had against New Zealand about 6 weeks ago. So maybe let's just start there, Shaun, with what was the biggest difference between this game and the Rugby Championship game a few weeks back?
Well, the fact that this one was not the Rugby Championship, but for the Kiwis anyway, and they'll be beating that drum. And to be fair, if we lost, we'd be beating it too. It was the last 3-4 games for sides has really been like, the coaches are really trying to, especially the Springbok coach, Jacques Nienaber, especially us, I feel, have been working on a bunch of things. Like, the Springboks have cut it really fine. I said it a little while back, like, that I thought the Springboks were a game short. So I'm eating my words now because it seems like everything's come together. But my word, did they cut it close? But yeah, this game was all about teams doing their thing. Like, nobody goes out there to lose, I don't think. But I also feel that, like, there was less that mattered after a while. After the All Blacks were like 21-0 down, you know, like, I mean, how long until they scored their first points? It's ridiculous. But anyway, so yeah, this depends how you want to read into it. Like, what's your story? You know, what agenda do you want to push? You can hit that one really hard.
It's just interesting just seeing, obviously, I think just in broad strokes with all of the warm-up games, like, if you win, everything is all according to plan, the team's looking good, you're all settled, you're going to be all prepared for the win, to win the World Cup. If you lose, no, it's all part of the plan. I mean, we'll talk about Eddie Jones and Australia, but Taniela Tupou literally came out and said, no, we were hiding some plays for France, or away from France in the weekend. So it's just been interesting just seeing sort of the narrative argument. But I think in all reality, Shaun, did we learn too much from this game? Maybe not. I think when I think about it, I think this was the game that I kind of thought New Zealand would have against the Springboks earlier this year. Hey, are we sure about the front row that the New Zealanders have chosen? Are we sure about De Groot and Tara Lomax as scrummagers? Are we sure about Jordie Barrett in the midfield? Are we really sure about, like, the back three composition without Jordie Barrett there and Bowden Barrett at full back? Like, those are the things that I thought would come out more in the first game, and now they've come out in this game. And to be fair to New Zealand, though, it's still their first loss against their first loss in this sort of, or I think was technically their third loss, but their first loss in 10 in this like Schmidt and Jason Ryan era. So I think in the Men in Black, Will Smith had that thing where you can like forget like what happened just now. I think that's literally what New Zealand should do right now and just be like, yeah, we weren't in London this week. We were just on holiday. We didn't play a rugby game.
But we spoke about it during the URC, or was it the URC? But we spoke about it during last season where we felt, I'm sure it was Cooks that brought it up, said that every team kind of gets that do-over. It was you said you wanted a do-over. Like when everyone's cooking and then all of a sudden you take like a 50-21 loss and you're like, what the hell just happened there? That's kind of like, maybe that's kind of what happened, like just a little blip on the radar. Like, fortunately it didn't matter. And I think that's what, to be fair, if we had to do power rankings now, the Springboks would be streets ahead. I know France won well, but France won under pressure for 30 minutes. Ireland were under pressure. England lost. Scotland cooked, but I think the Springboks would be in prime position. So, yeah, you can't really...
Only behind Fiji.
Oh, shit. My humblest apologies. I was so pumped to talk about Fiji, and then I go and leave them out of that. Yeah, South Africa, Fiji, 1-2. There you go.
So let's go into the game a bit, Shaun. And you can't start with the 15 forwards that played on Friday night and just how they were absolutely dominant in the set piece and in the collision as well. So, I mean, the Springboks were milking penalties in the scrum, in the rolling maul. New Zealand had 14 penalties in total. We, of course, know they had 3 yellow cards, one of them turning into a red card for Scott Barrett, which I'm sure discuss in a bit. But if you look at all of the stats from the game in terms of like what the forwards did, the Boks absolutely controlled the ruck. They won 6 turnovers to the All Blacks 1. In the lineouts, New Zealand had 10 out of 15 lineouts won. So they were constantly under pressure with their throw. Of course, having Scott Barrett be out of the game for about 40, 50 minutes probably doesn't help there. And their scrum was under constant pressure, with either South Africa winning scrums or New Zealand having to do the quickest hook in the world to get the ball out of the scrums in time. I mean, I think we know this about South Africa. Like when they really want to, I don't know if it's a motivation thing, probably not, but like when they really want to, and if the opponent's forwards aren't really up for it, like they can make a day very, very, very long.
Yeah. It's interesting how it went down. It could have gone, like, I thought that we've really dominated the first 20 minutes of almost every game this year, but we haven't really kicked it on. And we scored our first points when there were 13 players. So there's that. And I think that's very important that everyone remembers and knows that. Like, I think that first 20 minutes is the big one for us. Like, we need to convert our pressure. But having said that, is we also know that we can play that long game of pressure, and which we did, and we continued to push them, and then they crumbled. The errors and the penalty count and everything that they made was all due to our pressure. It could have been there were other factors, but it was absolutely due to our pressure. So yeah, there's interesting times ahead, but I want us to clean up that 20 minutes. I want it to be better.
And I mean, yeah, I think that's a big point. I think the Boks had something like 12 or 16 entries into the 22 and only scored from 5. Yeah, look, frankly, that's not good enough, I think, if you're going to win a World Cup, because number one, hopefully, the best teams won't probably let you in 16 times to your 22. So I think the Kiwis were very generous on Friday. But secondly, yeah, your conversion rate needs to be a lot better. And I mean, if you compare that to what France did on Sunday against the Wallabies, obviously the Wallabies have their own issues. I think they had 8 entries to the 22 and converted from 4 at some point in the game.
Yeah.
And look, it's difficult because obviously it was a good performance and we won at the end and won quite handsomely. But those first 20 to 30 minutes, I think, were of some concern because it just seemed like, we were trying a few variations in the rolling maul that didn't really sort of get off. And then when we did, try to get into our phase play, it was much of a muchness with like one-off runners and people pushing behind them and everything. And New Zealand were able to keep us out for at least that first quarter. And when the ball did go out to the backs, not to blame Damien Willemse, but you saw the difference between Damien Willemse and Willie Leroux. And I mean, ironically, Willemse was the man of the match. I didn't really agree with that, to be honest. But
me too.
I think we can see the value of Leroux because I think there were a few 4-on-3s and 3-on-2s and those sort of situations where Leroux's instinct out wide is to obviously be able to put the finishers in a position to finish. Where Willemse, obviously, he's like, Willie makes plays for other people. Willemse can make plays for other people, but he'll probably, as a first option, look forward to make plays for himself, which is good. I don't think that's an issue. But I think in terms of just creating those opportunities to score, and especially with a pretty newish backline combination, I think that did hinder us from really getting, the opportunities that we need to get. Because, I mean, yes, we beat New Zealand 35-7, and I don't think any team should ever scoff at that, but this really actually easily could have been a 50 points to 7 type of situation.
Yeah. I agree with what you said with the first, with our 22 entries, but I do want to say one thing. It was glaringly obvious that our game plan for the first bit, however, 20 minutes or whatever, was to kick to the corner and get them to show us their hand on their driving ball defense. So that was obvious to me. So I spoke about it last week where I thought playing Wales and playing New Zealand were master strokes because of the way Wales unlock us. Unfortunately, when we played against Wales, they didn't have Bigger and Halfpenny, that bunch of late changes in the back line.
Yeah.
And that aerial pressure.
I think.
Yeah. That aerial pressure disappeared and then we put them away, which is great. But the plan of what we wanted out of that game I don't think quite went according to how we really wanted. The plan against the All Blacks was, since Ryan has joined, they have eaten our pack, and specifically on maul defense. So we very clearly went and were like, cool, let's test it out. Let's see what we need to do, or alternatively, let's do it so much against them we can see what they're doing to us. So essentially, they're kind of getting answers on another team's tactics that other teams would clearly use against us. We're like, cool, how do we counter the counter? And so I'd love us to have scored more, but that was our plan, and it looked very, very clear to me. And the other thing was that the All Blacks really infringed a lot, and kind of, even though they got a yellow card in 13 minutes, I think they kind of got away with quite a bit there. With regards to Damien Willemse, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's very difficult to give a forward the man of the match when you almost all your forwards played 40 minutes, and the one forward that stayed on got yellow carded. But I don't think he deserved man of the match. I thought he was a little bit wasteful. And exactly what you mentioned. I think what Damien Willemse has shown is actually probably a young, relatively, please don't hate me for that, relatively inexperienced outlook, in that you could probably defend him quite easily by giving him a gap. So if you cover that gap, you give teams holes to play into because they think there's a gap there, but you've got a game plan for it. So there's that. And Willie absolutely is playing for everyone else, the way he does it. So the same as Canon Moody. Everyone's banging on about Moody's try that wasn't scored and everything. That is a good and a bad thing for me. He's a finishing 13, and that he's a 13. He's a winger in a 13 jersey, where there were two players outside. The percentage player was was passing the ball. The fact that he got to beat two brilliant defenders and brilliant players is another great thing. So, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. But I thought if I was going to pick man of the match, it would be between Peter Step du Toit and Manny Lebok, without a shadow of a doubt. It was very interesting. But we probably, we've got with our 33-man squad, we actually have two different teams we can play. It almost looks like we could play two different teams, of which both of those teams would be competitive or relatively competitive against almost all tier 1 sides. And we've probably got 2 or 3 game plans that we can utilize. I still haven't seen the kicking game plan. Is that gone? Like, I've been asking for it, saying it's going to come. And the reason why we mistake Jaden is because he's the best kicking 9, but we're not kicking from 9 anymore. So am I like, do I need to let it go? Or is that the move this year? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I think Faf did kick a lot. And I think that's one of the big differences between this game and the Rugby Championship game. I think the Rugby Championship game, we only kicked 14 times or something like low like that. And this game was 26. Obviously, it shows that we weren't chasing a game from like the first 20 minutes like we were in New Zealand. So there was a lot more kicking. And look, Faf de Klerk is, he's like the scrum off version of Damien Pinot, where you're like, this is great. You're going crazy right now and probably doing all over the place, but it's working out for you. So there's a lot of places where I'm like, okay, cool, get yourself involved, Faf. Like, I see the playmaking, and there's other places where I'm like, oh, you can calm down with that. But I think he was kicking quite a bit, and maybe it's also just an adjustment that we need to make.
So 26 times. I think possibly I wasn't paying that much attention. There was so much other stuff to look at, but it always amazes me that that we do kick a lot from hand and when we win well normally, but people only ever moan about it when we don't win. So yeah, one of those. It's like the referee, man. The referee's a brilliant ref when we win.
And he's absolutely the worst man in the world if we lose. So I think let's just to finish up on the forwards, Shaun. So we started with Kitsoff, Marks, Malherbe, Itzebeth, Mostert at 5, Kolisi, Dutoy, and Vermeulen. And then we had the 7 on the bench. Let's start with the first 8 that started. Is this our... do you think this will be our starting pack for most of our big World Cup games?
Yes. I think... I don't know about Mostert at 5. And not because I don't think he should be there. It's just... he's been taking a lot of fire lately. And he did pretty well. I suppose we always see him as a bench player, but that front row starting, the best thing about this is our second front row that came on dominated as much. This is giving me 2019 vibes. 2019 feels all the way, where you can't decide who's the better front row. And they're both going to get 40 minutes, so it doesn't really matter. And so there's that. I think the only thing would be 5 and 8. Duane Vermeulen wasn't in the running for a while, but he's literally turned everything around in 2023. And he's fighting for that, which is great. I'm super happy. I don't mind who starts between Vissa and Vermeulen. Vissa's a little bit off the boil, but not so badly that he's can be classified as in the shit category, as many people are. But Duane's doing well. I think we can. It's kind of swings and roundabouts. Like, do you want to start Duane Vermeulen to get things going? He's excellent on the maul defense. He's excellent in setting up stuff around the mix. Or do you want to bring him off the bench so he can do that one steal that we need in the 78th minute? It's really touch and go. But we're not far off with this starting pack. We really aren't. What are your thoughts on 5? Because we are in a position where we have Mostert, we've got Archer, Jean Klein could probably start at 5. I don't think anyone will complain if any one of them started 5, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Look, even Marvin Ori can't be... I don't think he's out of the of contention as well, even though he hasn't played the last 2 weeks. He's been a part of Itzebeth at least for about 5-6 tests in the last 2 years.
And he doesn't have bad games either. That's the thing.
No. And I think he's almost like a combination of a lot of the good things about the other 3. Like, he can run a line out, probably more so than Snyman can, because Snyman doesn't really run line outs like for Munster and even for South Africa. He's a workhorse like Jean Klein, and then he has the sort of ability with ball in hand, like obviously being that linking player for the for the fly coming through the back door there, as we saw in that Australia game. So I wouldn't rule him out, but I think the selections show he's probably near the bottom of the list at the moment. But hey, who knows? I won't second guess the Springbok coaches too much.
Yeah, but just also remember is the way that we do things, and where he's going to add most of his value is all going to be in prep, pre-game, and everything. And if he gets to play, then he's gonna do well. Like as mentioned, like he hasn't really had a bad game. So I think this is Marvin Orie. Really, he's like, if you want to look at why squads are important, he's that guy. Because you're right, like who's leading the line out, who's doing the stuff, who's prepping and checking and stuff. So, I mean, it was quite clear in Chasing the Sun that those roles were handed out amongst the players. So, there's that. I actually did forget, because I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. I completely forgot that he was on tour. It's quite crazy, because I was pushing really hard for him as well at one stage.
Yeah, and like back to your question, Shaun, I think this was Mostert's best game in a bit. He's playing in his natural number 5 position. He was busy around the field. Obviously, we know he has a good understanding with Malcolm Marx, built over years in Joburg, for the lineouts. The lineouts were, 90% there. I think there was one wayward throw from Marx, and I think one from Bonambi as well. But they were mostly there. As far as possible. And defensively, both him and Etzebeth got at least a steal each, if not more. So I think Mostert is great in that. And obviously he does his more than his fair share of work in the loose, being like him having played a lot of 7 in the last few years. So I think I would really go with this pack as my starting pack for Scotland. The one thing though with Dwayne, which I think will be interesting, is he's essentially a lineout. He runs the lineout, kind of like how Peter Omani runs the lineout from flank, and even someone like Charles Olivan for France. So if we don't pick Mostert at 5 and we pick someone like Snyman, for example, although I think the Springbok coaches want Snyman's impact off the bench, but let's say we pick Snyman or Jean Klein, I think then the lineout running has to go through Dwayne, which means I see it as if we don't pick Mostert, then we have to pick Dwayne at number 8. I can't really see a situation where we go into a big game with Visa and Snyman or Klein in number 5, because we need Dwayne to be able to basically help or run the line out if we don't have Franco Mostert as our number 5. So yeah, I think the 5 and the 8 calls can be somewhat linked in that case. But I think the best for the Springboks is Mostert 5. I like what you said about Dwayne at 8. Like him coming off the bench, obviously we saw how Francholo was valuable for that, especially in the semi-final.
Exactly what I was thinking. It's exactly what I was thinking when I was saying that. I saw Flo just going in there, bosh. Thank you.
Yeah. So between him and Kwagga Smith, I would at least want one of those players on the bench, because I think those are the two can turn the game for you in the last few minutes. Either, and with both of them, they can probably do it in many ways. Either if they need a big attacking run or a big turnover or big tackle, they can do it in all sorts of ways. So yeah, I think I would be more than happy if this was the starting pack against Scotland. I think that will give us the best chance of playing.
Yep, I'm with you. I have no problem with it. Just very interesting. I mean, how long have we been banging on about Mostert not belonging at 5 anymore? Remember? Everyone's like, he's never going to make it. And then oh, blindside flank, we'll take him as a hybrid. Excellent. Now blindside flank, you're not a 5 anymore. Now he plays 5, everyone's like, no, don't do it. And now he's playing 5 and we're like, woo!
I'm happy we kind of landed there, because, I mean, especially with obviously the Lut injury, we do need that person to sort of run the show in the lineouts. Let's talk about the 7 bench players. I saw that because you messaged for us on our group, and I saw it just before the the kickoff, and I was like, what? It caught me absolutely off guard, because I was literally just doing a bit of work and then was literally just settling in just before the national anthems. And I saw the message and I was like, wait, what just happened? And then obviously seeing the execution of it with all 7 coming on. I mean, I think for New Zealand, that should have been the moment. They should have called off their best players and said, look, we've done our best. Let's just chalk this one off, get RD off, get Aaron Smith off. Yeah, we're not going to do much today. Yeah, I guess the question is this a legit strategy going forward? I mean, yeah, I'm probably one of the few South Africans that's maybe not really a fan of 6-2 because I just don't like the risk. 7-1 is almost sending me over the edge, to be honest. But I mean, there's a lot of whispers, at least from the Bok camp and from people in the know, that say that no, this could be a legit strategy for the World Cup.
I don't see how it could be. However, I'm so happy that we did it first.
Before Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones was talking about it a little while ago, and Jacques Nienaber was gone. Hold my beer, I got this. They even gave him 2 or 3 games to be the first. I believe that this was planned within the Springbok camp the week already. It wasn't as late changes as what we all heard out about. But yeah, so going back to your question, I see the risk in 6-2. I totally see the value. I think I don't think the wins the balance of a 7-1 will work. We've got the personnel. That's the one thing. You play Damien Willemse that day. You play Jesse Creel. You play Cannon Moody. You play Jesse Creel. You play Cheslin Colby. You play Faf. You play Jaden. You play
covering all of the positions.
Yeah. But you start them, and then the guys can move around and thing. But you are going to land up with Kwagga on the wing, and it's not ideal. I don't think you play on the wing. Actually, I think he might probably play, and he'll defend probably in the 10 or 12 channel, and then on attack, it doesn't really matter because then we'll just work our shapes and set it up and just pile it up with the forwards. But I think it's way too risky in a big game. I think going into Scotland, there's no way that we are doing a 7-1. We're not doing it against Ireland, and we won't be doing it in the quarterfinals unless there is a legit pull a hamstring in the warm-up situation. We've tried it. We've checked it out. They've weighed up the pros and cons. To think that Jacques Nienaber and has told Rassie or the rest of the crew, listen, just for shits and giggles, let's try this out against the All Blacks at Twickenham. There's no ways. There's no ways it was an ego thing to just chalk it off as being the first. So the thing is we've been so it's like, in a good way, Stockholm syndrome. We know that every single thing that happens in the Springbok setup, there's a plan. We know that. We don't know what it is, but we know that there was a plan. We know that it was planned, and we know that there is a plan around it. What the plan is, we don't know, and we don't know when it's going to happen. And also, what sort of a new rugby player have we just invented? Andre Esterhuizen stocks are going to skyrocket. Flanker stroke 12. Let's be honest here. Craig Burden. I mean, he's shit, man. I was born in the wrong decade. Tom Youngs. These guys all played forwards and backs and whatnot. So, I don't know. Have we just changed everything? To be fair, the Jacques Nienaber and Rassie, they love to change things around. But that's the thing. What is the plan? What is happening? What is it? What is the benefit? What are the pros and cons besides the obvious ones? And when are we going to unroll this for real? Or are we?
Yeah, look, I mean, the stocks on someone like Kwagga Smith and Seku Makalu have never been higher, I guess. But yeah, I think we probably only see this in the Romania-Tonga games. Just to, maybe, I mean, I think we only took 14. Yeah, we did take 14 backline players, and obviously them being 4 scrum halves and all that sort of stuff. So maybe the tactic might be that Kwagga, you're going to do some double duty on the wing in those sort of games, hopefully
But
with
we've
like
got wings.
the score at
We don't
30,
have
40,
10.
50, which, yeah, I mean, look, Kwagga has some 7 skills. He can maybe do a job there at fly half.
If he ever had to play 10, every single person in South Africa would be like, probably not the best idea, but we're okay with it. You know?
Well,
Cool.
look,
What?
I don't.
You want to play blindside flank? You want to play open side flank? You want to play 8th man? Done. All good. Oh, look, you're playing on the wing. That's fine. You want to play fly half? Go for it, buddy.
I think we even forgive like a loss to Tonga if Kwagga Smith plays a 10. We're like, you know what? At least you saw Kwagga at 10. We can live with this.
We can't lose. We cannot lose to Tonga.
I mean, I don't say we should, but
we can't. We're playing Ireland last in our pool game. We cannot afford to go into that Ireland game having to must win it. We want them to be under pressure. Stop it.
Okay, I was just suggesting. But going now to, I guess, some of the selection questions, I guess, for Jacques Nienaber going into the Scotland game. Let's start with number 9. So I think Faf had a Faf-like game. Some moments of great playmaking and brilliance, and obviously, I think Faf is close to one of the best players in the world in those little kicks that he does in the attacking 22 for the wings. Like, we've scored a try probably every second or third test Faf has started from those little kicks and dinks that he does. His field kicking, I think, was mostly good. It had a few parts where he just kicked possession away, but I think it was mostly good. And it was good contestable kicks. And obviously we know his value in defense. Jaden had a really good game starting on against Wales. We know the value that Grant Williams and Cobus Reinach have as impact players. So who of the two are playing in Scotland, Shaun?
This is probably the cuckest question of the lot.
Wait until the wings one.
Yeah, no, I'm cool with that. I've got that done.
Okay.
I always thought it was going to be between Faf and Jaden to start or bench, and then between Grant and Cobus. However, we are probably going to go into Scotland with a Faf and Jaden. But it's such a cuck one. The thing is, it's really about tactics and what is our plan, which we'll only find out once the squad's announced and once we watch the game. But the plan, are we going to run them? Do we feel that we're going to run them off their feet and then it's going to open up later? Because then Damien Willemse cooks, Grant cooks, Cobus cooks, is that the plan? Or, to be fair, Scotland are having one thing that they have shown is that they love a second half and they love performing in the second half. So are we going to then say, cool, we are sticking to our game plan and our structures from A to Z? In which case we'd have to go with Faf and Jaden. So I've done a very good job of not answering, but I would probably say Faf and Jaden. And it goes against everything that I thought that we were doing and how we were doing it. But I feel that that's what's happening for Scotland.
Yeah, I think you make a good point with the game plan thing. And yeah, it will also come into the conversation about the other positions. But I mean, I like obviously the fact that we're kind of adapting to, number one, obviously just expanding the game plan that the Boks have. And number two, adapting to the fact that our fly-off is now Mani Libbok and not Andre Pollard. So there is a bit more, running and chancing our arm. But I think the basis of the game plan is still the same. And I think we're not going to play too differently from what we did on Friday, which is, if them up physically up front and then just be uber aggressive in our defense and hopefully get a few tries and opportunities from that as well. So I think, and obviously relying on the kicking game to put pressure on the opposition as well and use that as an opportunity to do counteracts and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I probably lean towards that as well. That one of Faf or Jaden starts and the other one's on the bench, and we just constantly put the Scottish back three under pressure with our kicking game. But yeah, I think you make a good point though. That I mean, number one, Scotland love a second half. Shaun, you're doing your power rankings about who's the best teams in the world. Second half, Scotland might be number one of those power rankings because they turn into absolute animals in those second halves. And Duan van der Merwe just grows like an extra leg and just runs over people. So that might be something to watch out and see. I don't know, does South Africa try to counter that or what they do with it? Because they seem to get better as the game goes on. And the second thing is, I guess that I kind of would not want Grant Williams and Kobus Reinach and that sort of try to run them off their feet game because Scotland love nothing more than chaos, which is why I think they give France a hard time because France obviously wants to, play the ball and not be boring. I think the Scotland game is a one game for the Springboks to be as boring as they can be. So yeah, I think Jaden and Faf are our most boring scrum offs in that case.
Yeah, and we mentioned it at the during the Lions tour, like when Duan van der Merwe starts is the best thing for the Springboks. And then in 2022, we said, thank God that this Duan wasn't playing in the Lions tour. Well, now we get to face him. He's cooking. And Thala, it was you, if I'm not mistaken, a little while back talking about the Scottish tactics and how they like to spread it wide to stretch the defense. So they bring like a big man like Van der Merwe in. He makes a little bit of gain line advantage or a lot, and then they send it wide into the midfield where they kind of attack a really disjointed, broken defense. So, yeah, agreed. I think game plan is kick them. Black Kinghorns actually, Hogg's retirement could hurt us a little bit. Kinghorns in some great form, pretty decent under the high ball. However, if they start Darcy Graham, we'll work him. If they start Carl Steyn, which I don't think they'll do, I think they'll start Darcy Graham if he's fit because he offers way more. He's a better strike runner. He's a finishing winger where Duan's a finishing and a setup winger, and Carl Steyn's just a keep the ball alive kind of a winger, and he'll go for the try if need be. So if Graham starts, which I think he will if he's fit, then we'll just panel him all day.
Yeah. So I think this nicely segues into the next selection dilemma in our backline. And there's, as you mentioned earlier, Shaun, there's been a rising tide of support for Andre Esterhuizen, and he had a great performance. I mean, the one thing that, I think I'm more of a Esterhuizen skeptic. And one thing I was always saying was that I need to see him do this against like a serious team. I mean, great, you can do it against Australia, who are not a serious team right now, but doing it against the All... Let's be honest.
20% of our listeners.
We will see you after the World Cup, guys. But yeah,
it's a short one for them, though.
I mean, fair enough. There'll be.
That's even worse.
Let me not launch into that just yet. But he did against the All Blacks. He did against Jordy Barrett. Barrett looked, I think, as ordinary as he has looked playing in the midfield. He made a few big line breaks and he beat some defenders, and we saw obviously his ability to run and to pass and create for others as well. The tide is rising for Andre Esterhuizen, and obviously Damien Allende is not really good at the things, or we don't see often the things like him being good at the flashy things. He's obviously fantastic as I think he has the most post-contact meters in rugby, I think last year, and he's obviously just a fiend in the ruck. Shaun, I lean towards starting Damien Allende for the Scottish, especially because that Hugh Piloto midfield needs, I think, that Allende Creel defensive combination just to be on the same page, tracking Finn, tracking Hugh Piloto, tracking Hugh Jones, because all three of them are masters at picking a line, and all three of them are masters at picking up at any little gap or misunderstanding in the midfield. And I mean, Esterhuizen has played a lot with Creel, and I don't think Esterhuizen is a bad defender, but I definitely think De Allende is a better defender than Esterhuizen. What do you think about this dilemma?
Agreed. It's Damien Allende starting at 12. They're going to have to go with combos. there's no doubt that the best centre pairing we have right now is Damien de Allende and Jesse Creel. So are you going to break that up to put Andre Esterhuizen there? The thing is what people don't see is, so there's two things. There's pre-contact footwork, which like Damien Willemse does. Jesse, why I keep doing Jesse Creel when I'm trying to say Ches and Colby? Sorry, that is the most bizarre balls up I've made. It's such a weird thing. Even in my mind, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So Ches and Colby, Damien Willemse, they do like a lot of pre-contact footwork, which is great. The thing with Damien de Allende, he does post-contact footwork, which always takes us over the advantage line. But a lot of people don't see it because they're too busy bitching and moaning and throwing their hands in the air because he's taken contact. So, that's a thing. It's a combos thing for me. Our premier center pairing is de Allende and Creel, and we are not breaking that up right now. Andre Esterhuizen has got better and has grown. He has linked well with a couple guys. He's played with a couple of options at 10 and 13. Can't remember. I think he's played with Creel. But so he's doing the job. And the thing is the only thing that's stopping this whole thing right now is de Allende's experience, his understanding of everything, and his connection with Creel. That's that. And there's a lot of other unseen work that de Allende does that Esterhuizen doesn't do as well. I wouldn't say he doesn't do it. So yeah, it's like Andre Esterhuizen, I don't see him making the match day 23 for Scotland. That's the thing though about Esterhuizen and de Allende. They're either starting or they're in the stands. They're not even on the bench, and they won't be for this World Cup. I don't feel. Funny thing, but before we scoot off this, I do want to chat about. I do think we're going 5-3 on the bench, by the way. But please, let's talk about that later. But I totally think we're going 5-3.
I was about to say when you said Esterhuizen won't be in the 23, I was thinking, 5-3 might be a possibility. And I think he's probably put himself, depending on where Canan Moodie is or is not in the 15 or not, I think he's probably front of the line there to be that third backline player, because obviously it's Willemse, one of the scrum halves, and then someone else. And
Moodie,
obviously Creel can cover wing if it's Esterhuizen, and de Allende can move out to outside center, etc., etc. So I think he. There's
changing things up. So you imagine having Esterhuizen, de Allende, and Creel on the wing. That would be some heavy duty bodies to run against.
Yeah, and I think with Creel at the wing, especially for Scotland, that's not the worst thing in the world. If he's marking Duan, if he's obviously making the calls from the wing to tackle people, and again, not that I don't want it to sound like Scotland has this unbeatable attack, but their clear advantage, and it's similar to Ireland, but their clear advantage is sort of the sleight of hand that they do with their 10, 12, 13. And their 10 is obviously the most tricksy little trickster in the world right now. Tuipulotu is, Tuipulotu, Sione Tuipulotu as a single man, not the combination. He's great. Just been saying Tuipulotu so much that I forget he's actually a single person.
As a single man.
as a single eligible man, he is great at running, kicking, and passing. I think that's the underrated thing about Tuipulotu. He's a all-court threat. He's a triple threat in that regard. You can't just think
kick pass run 12s out there, eh?
Yes, 100%. So that's a threat. And then Hugh Jones picks lines like nobody's business. So if your 10, 12, 13 isn't solid and connected, and of course we use our wing almost as a second 13 in the open side, then that's where issues can come up. And that's why I'm thinking as far as possible, it should be de Allende and Creel monitoring this. And then if there is changes or whatever the case is, I'd rather have someone now moving to the wings. I think this might be the game for Canan Moodie to play 14. So 2 reasons for that. Obviously, I caught a lot of slander for my comments about being tired of people saying his experience playing 13 at Ball and Landbo proves that he'll be a world class 13. I'm just so glad we finally have a game where Moody played 13 that we can now go, okay, he's going to be a good 13, or he has at least the skills to be 13, not this hypothetical rubbish we were doing the whole time. Because then we must talk about like Thibaut Flamand could be a world class number 10 as well because he played 10 at club rugby level. Like,
which is even
I was so
closer than the
excited.
school.
Yeah, so I'm just
I
happy that that talking point is done now for good. Hopefully.
yeah. So on my feels on this, so a lot of, I mean, we were talking about Willemse earlier. It must be said that with the dominant win that we had, like we are going to be like overly critical when we're having a look at things. It's going to sound a little bit unfair, but it's not that we're being sore losers. It's just more that we obviously can see that we can get better. So the reason why Moody played at 13, obviously he played there at school, so he has an understanding for the game. But it was his defensive reads on the outside that for me, really made that decision easy. His outside reads coming in, which is what our outside backs do, they always shoot up. His decision making and execution helped that decision for him to move in at 13. This is one step in one step of many. He's not in the top 3 13s in that squad right now. He might be third choice. That's one thing people must understand. He made a few errors. So he made 10 of his 14 tackles. If we're very honest about this, if Jesse Kriel made 10 or 14 tackles, people will be shitting the bed. Like, let's be very, very honest here. So we've got to understand, and I'm all, you know me, I'm like, cool, whatever you compare this guy to, you've got to compare in the same. You can't be now talking a different story when you're trying to justify things. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that he's a bit too much. He's got a winger's mindset, so that's how he plays the game. And it's only one game at 13. So I definitely want to see him at 13 again. And I do feel this is a 2024 decision and a World Cup emergency backup. He's got the goods to be there. I just think everyone needs to understand that with all of this, he will have a bad game at 13. It's the nature of the beast. 10 and 13, you can easily have bad games on either side of good games. So I'm all for it. And I'm loving that we've got a 13 option. Now we just need to make sure that it completely ties into what we need. And then we've got to pair him up with someone at 12. And the one thing that I really wish we could have seen is we could have seen him play at 13 with Allende at 12, Colby at right wing, Mapimpi at left wing, and Villiers at fullback. That I want to see him play in a settled backline. Then we must talk. I want to see that first. So yeah, I was super happy, but if there's gaps there and there's holes and they will be filled, but he's there as a winger, not as a 13. So which is great.
Yeah. Look, I mean, he did something that I don't think many people do when they play 13 for the first time at senior level and that have a really good game. But yeah, I mean, I think another factor to remember is that, the 15 forwards that played also helped most of the Springbok backline look really good just from the platform that they gave them. So there wasn't as much that they needed to do, and they weren't obviously tested by the All Blacks who, their attack pretty much, fell to pieces. But when he was called upon, he did, make the reads that he needed to make there, and he did make the tackles. I mean, yeah, I think him and Willemse, ironically, were the two people that missed the tackles on Roy God when he scored. Shaun?
Yeah. Very, I couldn't think of a better way for a guy to make his move to 13 than to have that platform. Like, that is the big thing. And it couldn't have happened at a better time for all people involved, but he got to play where he got to dictate a lot. Sometimes you get dictated to as a 13, and that's where your defensive and your footwork and your spacing and your actual where you've got to be, where it matters. And he wasn't put under pressure, so it wasn't really opened up that much. And not saying that it would be opened up, but it would be surprised if he wasn't a little bit off the mark one or two times before. But I'm just glad that he had a good game at this
Yeah.
opportunity. That's the big thing for me, because South Africans are they're the worst. They're like, oh, here's the next cab on the rank. Off you go. We don't want to see you ever again, Willie Leroux. You're a cuck. Now everyone's like, well, hang on a second. Willie Leroux is definitely the best 15 in the world. And the same would have happened with Canon Moody. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's been banging on that drum. He played 13 at school. He's this, he's that, and blah, blah, blah. It's excellent, great. If he had a shit game on Saturday, everyone would be like, right, get him out of the squad. Let alone at 13, get him out the squad. Yeah.
And take his passport.
Yeah. That's what pisses me off the most. So on that side, I'm super happy that he had a good game. Well, like, he wasn't shown up. So now there's opportunity. It's great for him. It's great for everyone. There's not one person that is a problem for.
Yeah. Shaun, let's get to the wing. So you said you have the solution for the wing.
Well, Mapimpi on the left and Colby on the right against Scotland.
Classic. Mm-hmm.
There's no way. There's no defender better than Chiz and Colby, and I tell you what, Canon Moody's coming close, and on the right, and then Mapimpi is incredible on the left. I mentioned to you off air, I think it was. I can't even remember if I spoke about it on air, but the only time Mapimpi trends is when he's not playing, and everyone's like, no, he's shit. But then when he plays, he puts in that performance like he did on Friday. He hardly puts a foot wrong. He's a beast there. He's our only winger that actually seeks out contact, and I like it. I like it. He's a big guy, and he's got that amazing like acceleration bounce vibe about him. But I don't. We start really. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun, but we're going to go with the usual back three against Scotland. There's no doubt in my mind. We can't afford to put a foot wrong. The guys have been playing well. There's no reason to drop. There's no reason to drop 10, 12, 13, 11, 14, and 15 that played the last couple of weeks. You know, our first choices. There's no reason to drop them. Like, dropping them because you think someone might be better is not the reason why we drop players for the Springboks. That doesn't fly that way. So, yeah, Colby on the right, Mapimpi on the left. Who are you going with, Mr. Change It?
Look, I think there's no wrong answers. I think let's just start there.
That's also true. That's a very great point.
And Moody and KLA have forced our hand to such a point where there's a conversation. I mean, this time last year, if you said to me that it would be someone else other than Mapimpi and Colby, I think we'd all call that person crazy. But now they've played well. They've done it against, all sorts of teams. Like, it's now at least a conversation. And Shaun, I think you're probably right, but I think the case for Kane and Moody starting at least against Duan, I can see it. I mean, obviously the one thing that sticks in my brain, or there's two things that stick in my brain. Number one, obviously Moody and his ball and Landbo experience at 13 give us obviously a person that can make those defensive reads that he's done. And obviously Duan's going to be roaming and roving a lot. So you need Moody to have his eyes open for whoever's either going to be on the wing or where Duan is, not to man mark him, but just to know what's going on. So those eyes will be scanning out for that. Number two is just thinking about Duan against Ches and Colby in the Lions series and how the Lions used Duan as just, obviously this absolute tower to just climb over Cheslin when he was fielding those like up and unders. So obviously with Moody, him being 1.9, that negates that option a lot. And obviously Moody's not so bad himself in the air. So I think it just gives us a bit more security under the high ball. And yeah, I wouldn't mind it also just to give Duan a bit something to think about defensively as well. I mean, look, Duan is not, I wouldn't call him the best wing defender in the world. If Brian Habana was starting an analytics company, I'm sure he'd also say Duan is slow to turn.
Shots fired.
But I think Moody's that nice mixture of big, good in the air, good defensively, and like elusive enough to keep Duan busy. So I wouldn't mind Moody at 14, and I actually don't really care who you play at 11. They obviously know they're going to have a full day with Darcy Graham playing at opposite them. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if Moody starts at 14 in the Scotland game. But I also say that saying, I don't think that's necessarily the right decision for the Island game, because with Hansen and Lowe, you need again wings that are going to be open to the fact that Hansen and Lowe just pop up anywhere that they want to, and they're basically secondary playmakers for Ireland. And you need to also have your wits about you defensively as well. So yeah, I think there's arguments you can make. You can even maybe go Colby and Moody for this game, and then Mapimpi and KLA for the Island game. Like, I'm sure something crazy like that might even be thought of. But yeah, I'm just saying that Moody might be a good player to play against Duan, just to keep him honest defensively and also just to negate his threat in attack.
I would agree with you if it wasn't 2023 Colby. He has been tackling better and harder than the only other person that's been doing it like him has been Moody. But Colby, he's been hitting like a sledgehammer. He's always been a good defender, but he's now hitting hard and he's getting stuck in and he's making all his tackles, it looks like. So you've got a valid point. I still think that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of other, which means that Colby gets the nod, and that's the difference. If Moody had like another 5 games, 6 games under the belt, different story. But right now, especially because Colby's in form, he's defensively. I can't remember when did he play on the left wing against Wales?
I think Wales, yeah.
And then the week before, he played on the right. But I can't remember. But he's just been really making great tackles. He's hasn't been left wanting. He hasn't been found wanting. So, and that's the thing. These are the decisions that guys are making. Like, it's touch and go for a whole bunch of positions. And the guys that are have a better pairing or are a little bit more experienced and have had the jumper for the longest will get the nod for me. But having said that, there's been a whole bunch of different stuff happening this year. There's been some weird, not weird. There's been some unusual decisions. Not starting, but building up to that squad announcement. So yeah, who are we to say that it's going to be boring?
It will give us content at the very least. Shaun, I think just to finish up, 2 things. One, for New Zealand, is this a case of our worst, like, this confirms some of the worst fears that, hey, maybe putting Geordie at 12 and, relying on De Groot and Lomax. But it just came out now, as we are recording, that Scott Barrett won't be was cited, but he won't be suspended for the opening game. So at least they have averted
the decision. This is as bad as that Farrell first one. It's a shocker.
Yeah. Let's discuss that very quickly, because I think I have a different view to that. Go for it, Shaun.
Well, get ready to fight now. First yellow, team 1, done. Second was a yellow and referred to the bunker. I saw someone commenting on one of my WhatsApp groups. He was like, well, you couldn't even see clear head contact and it wasn't that bad. I disagree. His body movement and everything. So granted, if there's no clear head contact, which I'm sure there was, but maybe that is the thing that got him off. But everything about what he did and why he did it was to enforce himself on marks, not to clear a ruck. There was no rugby related anything but to dominate a man on the floor. And that not being upgraded to red in the bunker was, for me, the first error that I've seen come out since this bunker setup. I've been super happy with the bunker. It's all post-bunker stuff that's been chaos. But I was adamant that he was going to get cited, and he was cited, and I can't believe that it was so quick that he's been given off. And I can't believe that he's off. So I'd love to read that ruling, but like, everything about what he did was illegal. So if he makes any head contact at all, like, that's got to be a red card. So I'm almost sure there was head contact. Red. Yes. Why? What is wrong with my language? So yeah, but I'm interested to hear your incorrect decision, Thala. Please let's hear it. You'll have a dick.
Well,
Go for it.
no, look, and I'm just reading sort of as you're speaking as well. So, obviously, Jared tweeted it out. He said that the Independent Judicial Committee decided that a sending off against South Africa was sufficient and that no further sanction was necessary.
No. He was sent off for 2 yellows. That wasn't a red card on its own. That is horseshit.
So my thinking is, number one, I do think it was quite clear that he hit more of Marx's shoulder than Marx's head. I don't think he actually really hit Marx's head. I mean, I fully agree with you on it was reckless. It wasn't a rugby incident. He was only going there with intentions to hurt and was stupid. And I think if he got a ban, he had only himself to blame type of situation. But I think because he didn't hit Marx on the head, that gives obviously an out to make that decision there. Number two, I think it is yellow enough to get away with not having to sort of make it a red and upgrade it like happened in the game, and seems to be decided by the sanctioning committee as well. And, sometimes the red card is a sufficient in the case that we say it is a red card, I think sometimes the red card is a sufficient sanction for certain things. That, you know what, you are punished through the basis that you weren't able to complete the game, more so than we need to actually teach you a lesson about how you need to ruck or all that sort of stuff in future. Now, I am happy to admit that obviously Scott Barrett got a pretty similar red card literally in this game before the World Cup 4 years ago. So, I mean, he has great timing with that. Yes, I think for the Crusaders.
2 years. He's got 2 in 2 years for this sort of cuck.
So I think that should have been a big factor, yeah.
I also think that's one of the reasons. Same as Farrell. If you give him a red card, you've got to go back and look, you've got history, so boom, you get 6 weeks. That's also, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but sheesh, it's really been flipping, that fire's been lit up in me the last month. I think that's a factor too.
I was about to say, I think the Judicial Committee was like, look, we're not going to go against what the bunker said. We don't want all the drama from this week. I think it's very unlikely that even if people are unhappy about this, that this will go through the whole World Rugby appeal process that the last decision made. I don't think I think this is one of those where there's enough margin of error. And I mean, between us and between the listeners as well, it's quite clear that World Rugby's sanctioning has been towards trying to get as many of the stars playing in the World Cup as possible. So I can see why this is, I think, just a yellow. And yeah, I'm happy if it's either it seems like I want to read the whole decision, but it seems like either they decided the yellow was enough, or they said, okay, it is a red card offense, but the red card in and of itself was enough. They didn't need to put in a sanction to that, which it seems like from just reading some of the things that Jared is posting, that's something that the Judicial Committee can do. So if that's the case, I'm happy with that. But I can fully understand people saying that he does deserve at least some form of sanction, this being not his first rodeo with the red card. But on the field decision, I think also because, again, there wasn't head contact, I was fine with the second yellow. It was just it luckily for the ref and for the bunker, it didn't obviously make too much of a consequence, because either way it would have been a red card, and we don't have that stupid 20-minute red card system in the World Cup. So yeah, I can live with this. I think maybe that's more of an accurate thing than I think I fully support this. I'm more on the I can live with this decision.
Okay, if you want. I'm not happy. But
no, fair enough.
I hear what you're saying. I do. I think I agree. I think decisions are being made around making sure that players can go to the big dance, but they're not rugby law decisions. They're emotional decisions, which causes chaos. we all know making emotional decisions is not the greatest.
So quickly on the New Zealand thing, I mean, I was worried Jordy Barrett had to play lock because they would have been left with Scott Barrett. I mean, with Sam Whitelock, Tupuvai, maybe Luke Jacobson can deputize there. And because they took all three of Papali, Sam Kane, and Ardy, and they're the only flanks left with Frizzell out for the French game. I don't know if they had to like maybe think of like what Dane Coles as a loose forward reserve. I'm not sure what they would have done there. So
What, for
that
the World Cup?
crisis is for the opening game because
They would be
Brody
able to
Retallick is
replace
out
him.
with injury.
Are you talking about Barrett? If Barrett was banned,
Yes, if Barrett was suspended,
they'll be able to replace him.
Even if it was banned for a game or two.
No. If they kept him, sorry, if he was banned for like a bulk of the tournament, then they would have been able to replace him. But sorry, I see what you're saying. If he was banned for 2, yeah, I get you. My apologies. I was thinking for what he should have got versus some something a chop.
Okay. For the 20 games that Shaun would have banned him for.
Yeah, that was cut in half, and I gave him tackle school. Like he started at 55.
At least he's available for round 10 of the Super Rugby. So yeah,
Super Rugby USA in 2029.
So yeah, New Zealand have avoided a crisis, and I think if you want to be optimistic about New Zealand, is they clearly didn't turn up physically. They clearly were a bit rusty because obviously a lot of their first choice players only played that first Bledisloe Cup game because the second one was given to the wider squad to play in. So they didn't play rugby in 4 weeks. They got kind of blown away, and yeah, they didn't really turn up after those first 20 minutes. The cards went against them and they folded quickly. So I think you can either go, this confirms whatever sort of like fears you had about New Zealand. Like last year, there were those comebacks that teams were able to pull against them in the second halves. And I mean, they drew against England. They almost lost against Scotland and Japan. So you can say there are those concerns versus you can be like, okay, you know what, we can overlook this a little bit. They're hopefully closer to the team that faced South Africa in the first game. So Shaun, maybe it's a bit of an unfair question, but is New Zealand closer to the team that first faced South Africa this year or the team that lost on Friday?
No, that first faced.
Okay.
They're good for the World Cup. I'm really looking forward to that opening game. I think France, Australia showed that there is a way of getting to France for at least the first 30 or so minutes, even though they were 2 tries down. But France showed that you can get under them. Conversely, we showed that you could dominate New Zealand. So I think tactically, and whoever pulls it off in that opening game, it's going to be fun to see. But you can't judge New Zealand on Friday's result. What you can do is you can take some stuff out of it, like how to work them and what you can do and how they deal with things. But in a competitive World Cup game, they're a different baby. But I think they're a little bit weaker than obviously the usual All Black side we're used to.
And yeah, this goes back to my agenda, if you want to call it that Brody Retallick, especially when you're facing against a team like South Africa, is so important. And that's why he's like, I think lost only 5 games or something crazy like that in his career against South Africa.
Wow.
And most of the losses that have happened, I think in these like Rassie, Nienaber era, he hasn't played in those games. So I think he's a big factor as to them being competitive against like these like big forward packs. So there's that one thing. The last question I want to ask at least about this game is which of the agendas or wild Twitter takes you want to maybe dig into? So option A is now this proves South Africa leaving Super Rugby has absolutely destroyed New Zealand rugby. Let's ignore the fact that New Zealand has had our number in the Rugby Championship the last few years. They've won all of the Rugby Championships since, and Australia has a winning record against us. We've left, they're now much worse than they were before. Or the breakdown, which was probably, don't listen to it, to be honest, like it was the most, I mean, even for the breakdown and even for sort of like giving a bit of bias to Kiwis, it was probably the worst takes I've seen. But now New Zealanders are saying, take away the bunker system that we suggested that everyone should have because it doesn't work. It makes the game slow. You can't have a test that goes for over 100 minutes. People are bored. We need to quicken the game up and have only 3 forwards on the bench. So, yeah, I'm not sure, Shaun, which of the Twitter hot takes you think were taking the most.
They're both cuck. None of the above. They're both, it's diabolical. It's diabolical. I've said it for a long time. I believe New Zealand are getting weaker because Australia are weaker. Australia and New Zealand are New Zealand are better when Australia are better. They play each other the most. Yeah. Super Rugby, swings and roundabouts. Were we that dominant in Super Rugby? Like for reals? Were we?
No.
If you bring us back into Super Rugby, then we don't get to see this Fiji. So this Samoa, this Fiji. Like, we've got to look at it from that point of view. But those removing bunker systems, who like, do they even know what the bunker system's all about?
I don't think they do. The breakdown was always talking about the TMO.
But the bunker system doesn't waste any time. The game was 100 minutes because New Zealand infringed 165,000 times. And there were like 300 final chances and all that sort of jazz. Like those conversations, that slows the game down. Scrums and all that slow the game down. It wasn't the Springboks having 7 forwards on the bench. Go bug off, man. Like that was, what a load of cuck. That was clutching. That's clutching. That's we only watched the game, extended highlights of the game, and we kind of watched little bits and pieces, and we're just gonna see what social media was moaning about and jump on that.
Yeah, I genuinely could not understand what the breakdown was on about for most of the episode. Like, yeah, there were just weird things that they were complaining about. Like you said, they seem to not. And that's what I'm so confused about. The bunker was a whole Super Rugby initiative. It was New Zealand, Australia being like, we don't want the TMOs spending 20 minutes making a decision. Like, let's send it to someone off site. And
was it their baby? I couldn't remember that.
It is their baby. And everyone in the rugby world was like, okay, cool. We'll take this and not the 20-minute red card. So well done, Aussies and Kiwis for once. And we were like, great idea. This actually works. Let's implement it. And it's been fine, mostly. And now they're like, no, we're now confusing the TMO, the TMO with the bunker, which is obviously crazy. And yeah, it's the same country that will obviously complain about Wayne Barnes missing the forward pass in the 2007 quarterfinal. And the TMO's involvements in the game were good involvements and were the right decisions. And they stopped tries from being scored where there was either, Moody being offside or a knock on from Talea, whatever the case was. Like, this is the whole point of the TMO being able to watch the game and to, come into the ear of the ref and be like, hey, I think you missed something here, so that we don't have big game-changing moments happen through mistakes. So again, I'm not understanding what the issue is. Obviously, it's being a sore loser.
Let's be honest. It's exactly that. If roles were reversed, the guys on SuperSport, what's it, the final breakdown? No.
Yeah.
What's
final whistle?
Final whistle. They'd be saying exactly the same thing. And the Kiwis would be laughing it off. It is. There's 2 reasons behind it. One is it's sore loser, so we've got to make spice. And the other is that they watched extended highlights of the game. They didn't watch the game at 4:00 in the morning. Like, there's no way.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they're like Cooks. Cooks is fair weather. He's like, nah, buddy. I'm not going to be doing anything stupid like this.
Shout out to our friend there. He's apparently fighting a losing battle against the Bears. Apparently he's fighting a losing battle with the Bears there in London, eh?
Well, I think the Bears are fighting a losing battle, but the only reason why the Bears are saved is because of the pound. But but yeah, these daily updates have been sensational. Like, I actually go back and I watch them separately every now and then. I don't only watch them once on the day.
Yeah, please watch those if you haven't already. Like, yeah. It's his daily updates of life in the UK.
My funniest one was how much he's like, so you have public transport, but you have to walk to your public transport. So in South Africa, you either walk or you get your own car or you get public transport. In here, you have to use all of those public transports. You have to walk, you have to get a bus, and you have to get another taxi car. This is the best.
No, that and his war against peas was absolutely hilarious.
Everywhere, my friend.
All foods. Shaun, let's go into the other big match of the weekend, probably the one match we should have led with, and that is Fiji beating England for the first time, 30 points to 22. A sensational game, honestly. Fiji just, if we're honest, actually, and this is probably the scary thing for England, but let's focus on Fiji for a while, but they pretty much controlled the game, and they controlled the game where it was raining, and they couldn't really do all of their, open running rugby type of thing. Like, there wasn't really many points where England looked like they were like the big tier 1 side here.
The opening 5 minutes.
I guess so.
Yeah, it was the opening 5 minutes. And I was like, this is going to get nasty for Fiji. And because it looked like England were like that. So England were structured and they played their game and they took the opportunities and they scored. And Fiji were trying to find themselves. And we've seen it so many times before where guys are like, oops, we didn't wake up soon enough. And then the game just falls apart. But this is a different Fiji. And they're cooking. So barring those first 5 minutes, I agree. Fiji largely dominated that. It was touch and go, but the longer, it's the same with any side that's an underdog. It's the same. You give them a chance. The longer they're in the game, the more chance you've got of losing. Like the odds start swinging more in their favor. And like, yeah, man, it was. And the same with Ireland Samoa. We'll get onto later. But it was Fiji. The only thing that I thought was I was worried about their pack. I remember 2019 they were good, and I thought their pack was great, and couldn't remember if it was going to be 2023 or 2019 Fiji pack that was better. But it turns out that it's 2023. I think that's pretty clear, and it's really like they've played well. That was the whole thing. We always knew they were just missing like the tight part of the tight five. The tight, the bigness, the like we can hold up to you all game kind of stuff. And they did it, man. And I tell you, there are a couple of tier 1 sides that are quietly shitting themselves for the World Cup. They've basically sent all their analysts off. Like, this is no ways a gimme. Just like, some games, you're going to win it. Like, it's going to hurt and they'll push you for 60 minutes. Like, we all know everyone's got that team, but Fiji are not that team anymore. There's no ways. You have to be prepared.
Oh, no, it's, great result for World Rugby. Great result also for, I guess, Super Rugby as well, just proving, I think, the value of the Drua. Like, obviously, you have the Radradras and the Mauis and the Matas and the nice levels that play for the big European teams. But this is the backbone of this team is the Fijian Drua. Like, about, I think, 8 or 9 of the players win the Drua, probably more. Just doing a very quick count here. But I think it's just the structure, and that's kept the team going. It's not, almost like a Barbarians team that all meets up before the World Cup, and it's like, hey, nice to meet you. Hey, I play in Japan, I play in France, I play in New Zealand, whatever. Like, it's a structure, and you're then adding all of the crazy superstars that they have, which is, I think, given them more of a structure. And I think, like you said, Shaun, there was that moment, I think, in the last bit of the first half where England was in their 22, they're doing rolling mauls. They did, I think, I think they conceded at the end, or they managed to, they got a yellow card. And you could just see that Fiji was able to just work it out. Like, you're obviously not as strong as England is in the rolling maul, but they were able to, just keep in the fight and not sort of allow them to score. They were able to, actually make a turnover and to win the penalty or the turnover scrum for themselves. Like, they were able to just fight in those situations. So it then was a situation where, because if England scored just before halftime, I think, Maui got the yellow card in the 38th minute. If England scored before halftime, it would have been 15 points to 3 to England. And that's with Fiji having a bit of the ball and it seemed like they were maybe a bit wasteful in that first half because they weren't really playing to the conditions. And that was sort of the 14-point swing because England didn't score before halftime, but Fiji then scored straight after halftime through Naisalevu. So it was important that they were able to do that. And Warren Gatland, who was watching, obviously he's facing Fiji first up with Wales. I mean, he can try to do the 10-man rugby, keep it boring, keep it tight, but I don't think Fiji's forwards are looking at Wales's forwards and are scared of them, to be honest. They're not seeing, the Alan Wynne Joneses and the Genthan Jenkins and Talupe Falata's at least going to be there. They're not seeing those players and those names and saying, oh, we're going to have a tough day for ourselves here. They're seeing a team that they're like, even if Wales tries to match us up physically up front, we've got something for them. We're not going to, leak penalties and the rolling maul and the scrums and everything. And Fiji is certainly looking at what Wales has done the last few weeks and said, if we get the ball close to their 22, we're good. Don't worry about that. We'll get at least a few tries from that. So, yeah, there is absolutely, definitely opportunities for Fiji to really make a lot of noise in Pool C. And Shaun, while they're currently the top ranked team in Pool C at the moment because they've reached their highest ranking of 7.
Yeah, that's very, I tell you, I had a look at that today and I was like, that is quite something. You never would have thought it. You wouldn't have put money on it, but it's quite interesting. Agreed. Fiji are, I think Fiji have unfinished business from 2019. I really was disappointed. I can't remember which game it was, but they lost a game they shouldn't have lost, and it cost them. It cost them big time. I think it cost them a quarterfinal.
Uruguay.
Yes, that's it. Like, what? So now this is coming. 2023 is some unfinished business, but coming off the back of them playing in Super Rugby for 2 years, and how this has definitely benefited them. Benefit them. Yo, I'm struggling here. Thala, you're gonna have to just put a disclaimer in place. So, like, they've definitely got better. They're definitely playing better, and there's definitely more to them and the way they're playing. And we've been saying it for decades. When Fiji and most, like Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, when they can sort their pack out and have a little bit more rugby and structured rugby, like not specifically in their test side, like for their players when they're playing together, which is kind of what's happening now, the world will change. The world will change. Like, they're going to be hosting World Cups and winning them. Crazy.
Yeah, and that actually brings me just to some very quick shout outs. I mean, Caleb Muntz, I think that's also a big thing that Fiji has a tight 5 and an actual number 10. I mean, all respect to Ben Volavola.
Yeah, don't you dare, hey? I was bummed he didn't make it.
No, but I mean, Muntz is better, to be honest, and he's able just to control the game a lot more than any other predecessors done. We'll again talk about Samoa because they have an even better number 10 in their ranks, or 2 of them. So just looking at the stats for the game, Fiji kicked 21 times, which I think in Fijian standards is quite conservative, even though England kicked 33 times. That was tactical from them.
Yes.
But like looking through all the stats, I mean, their defense was just as good as England. They had 84% tackle success rate to England's 82. Lineouts had a few shaky moments, but 12 out of 15, they can take that home against obviously England with Itoje and Chesham and Laws. Scrum success, 9 out of 10 scrums, they were able to get in and out. And I think the important one was England conceded 10 penalties, Fiji only conceded 7. So if they're disciplined,
that's a massive difference. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if Fiji's kicking at least decently, if they're disciplined, I mean, they did concede a yellow card, but they still had less penalties conceded. And if they can at least get parity in the set piece, like apart from Australia's scrum and maybe Georgia's scrum with Gogiashvili playing, I don't see a team in Pool C that will give them any issues if they can at least do those basics. Because we've done this enough without mentioning how great their backline players are. Ravatomado being the man of the match. He beat 8 defenders and had 82 meters and all that sort of stuff. Rajaja and Naisalevu were scary in the midfield. And you can just think that Josiah Tusova is going to join this team as well, which is absolutely frightening. Abosi was good. Drasese was really good from the back as well. So if they can just do all of the boring stuff well, and they can still add Levani Botia to help with the turnovers as well, because the turnovers are even between Fiji and England.
Now there's a player.
People are in trouble.
There's a player, Botia, who is going to dominate when the world go to 7-1 benches.
8-0. You can do 8-0 with Botia and Tusova probably. But yeah, Fiji has Botia it all set up there.
And Esterhuizen. You could do an 8-0 with Botia and Esterhuizen there. Sure.
Yeah, so Fiji's been great. I mean, a word on England. Yeah, I'm at that stage, and yeah, it's rare that it happens, especially with England. But I'm almost at that. I kind of feel sorry for them stage. Like they look so. I don't know if there's a word for it. They just look like the joy is out. Like now it's everyone's on their backs, or everyone was on their backs about them celebrating like all their small victories. Now they're not doing that anymore. Everyone was on their backs about. I mean, they had the odd turnover and all that sort of stuff, but like all of the things that were working for them are now gone.
England are better than that. Like they're better players, they're better individuals, better team, better everything. They're not having fun. There's something not right. I knew it was a shit decision to drop Eddie Jones before the World Cup. I didn't know it was this bad. It's it's just not looking right. Like everyone's turning on Borthwick. Like everyone's saying he's out of his depth. You know what it's like. Like the English press are the worst, man. And everyone's getting pinged. Like everything's being scrutinized now. Now they're like trying to weigh up, like, because there's still those guys that are blaming Eddie Jones, because that was the thing, is like it's just perfectly set up. Like if England are shit and bomb out of the World Cup, it's Eddie Jones's fault. If they do well, they're like, well, we just hired Borthwick in time. But I think people are starting to see that there's a lot of other stuff going on, and it's challenging and it's weird. But yeah, and the thing is like the press and everyone are just absolutely piling on everyone. Like the players are tweeting, like basically just giving everyone the middle finger, like just back off. England are definitely better than that. But like, when is it going to happen? Because if they lose their first game of the World Cup to Argentina, they're probably still going to make the quarterfinals. But if they lose their first game, then it's going to get even worse. But that at least allows them another 3 games to kind of build things up again, with one little potential banana peel along the way. But yeah.
I'm just trying to get England's fixtures in front of me just to see how the order is. So it's Argentina first, of course, like you mentioned. Then game 2 is Japan. As we said, Japan is not as good as it's been. They also have a massive problem with their goal kicking. They seem to be missing every goal kick that they're doing at the moment. So I don't know how they're going to fix that. Then it's then it's Chile. Then Samoa's the last game. That Samoa game, I think, is about to be epic.
Yep.
Because, I mean, we can transition to the Ireland Samoa discussion. Samoa's a proper team. They just lost to Ireland. What's the score there? I think 17 points to 15. Yeah, 17 points to 13. And I think, yes, Ireland were playing a second team and all that sort of stuff. But I think the main things to look out for was, number one, Samoa's scrum gave Ireland a lot of issues. And Samoa wasn't even playing... they didn't even start Faumuina or Tumaga Allen.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't start Alautoa. So I think their scrum can get better, honestly, from that performance. Number 2, conditions also weren't that great, but their set piece was fine. Obviously, you have McFarland and Luatua in one sort of pack. You can put in Talfor at the end there as well. Your lineout's going to be fine. And then number 3 is bloody hell, Lima Sopoaga as your fly half. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a better fly half for a Pacific Island test nation ever. I mean, we know how good Sopoaga is and was. We know that he was almost going to be first choice for the All Blacks once upon a time. Like, just having him controlling things, never mind the likes of Duncan Paiua, who played fullback on Saturday, UJ Suteni, who's in the midfield. Like, that just gives a lot more structure to this team. And they have enough for any team that faces them in the World Cup to at least give them a game. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if Fiji could borrow at least one of their strike runners to Samoa. I think they would be perfect, because I think their back 3 options are a little bit on the air side, because I think Tim Nanai-Williams might be still doing some minutes there, but they have enough to really put teams under pressure. Shaun, I know you watched this game. What were your thoughts on Samoa?
Samoa lost for one reason and one reason alone, and that was because they made some errors at the end. And for me, that goes down to them only playing one tier, one side in the last 10-ish games.
Yeah.
And that's it for me. And having said that, like, it was Lima Sopoaga who missed the kick to touch, and like they actually got 2 bites at the cherry. They got a nice get out of jail free card. But they were pushing hard for it, and it didn't work out. But the good news for Samoa is they did it not in a World Cup, and the bad news for England is exactly the same thing. Samoa will learn from that. So it's like, I mean, let's say Argentina have an off day and Samoa push them and get a point out of the game, and then England's lost up. Like, that's quite something. I don't know what Samoa's fixtures are, but I'm almost certain that they play Argentina before England. But you see, that's the thing. So it sucks. There's a lot of guys, like not a lot of those guys all play together in Super Rugby. So that's where Fiji are probably winning in that kind of battle. But they've got incredible players. And this performance in France against Ireland is exactly what Samoa needed. Exactly. And I really do feel that they will kick that on a little bit. We are in for one of the best World Cups ever. There are going to be upsets, like as a neutral, because, Ireland could go out early, South Africa could go out early. But as a neutral, this is going to be one of the best World Cups. Like, there are so many teams that can win it, and there are so many teams that are going to unwin it for someone else, and make their own history and stories around that. Like, I don't see Samoa and Fiji going on to win the tournament. I see them making a playoff and causing chaos.
Yeah, Shaun, I'm now fully buying into, we're going to talk about Georgia just now, but I'm fully buying into Fiji, Samoa, and Georgia all making the knockouts. Like, I was sort of holding it as a take. I was sort of, trying to scope things out and trying to just give England, Wales, and Australia especially a chance to kind of redeem themselves. But I think I've seen enough. I think it's those 3. Oh, can't hear me. That's I think it's those 3 that could be in it there.
I'm gonna make putting money on Argentina to win the World Cup.
The whole thing. Okay. I mean, I don't
look at their draw.
It. Yes.
Look at their draw.
They just have to be good for 2 games.
Chaker can get them ready for it, and he'll make them believe. He's somehow, like, those are a passionate group of people, and he somehow managed to give them his Lebanese dog, like that dog that he's got inside of him, that Lebanese fight, and with the Spanish passion. Like, that's quite something. It's not a bad shout.
And they love France. Look, out of all the Pool C
love
and
World
D,
Cups. They love World Cups. They love France, and they love playing away from home.
They've been good in every second World Cup, I think, since 2007, and every second World Cup since 2007 has been in Europe. So
And they weren't
things are
good in
looking
the
up
last
for
World Cup.
Argentina. Aha. Yeah, they also beat Spain 62 points to 3. Pretty much a second team. And obviously, Spain isn't even in the World Cup. But yeah, good warm up hit out for them. Yeah, look, RG's, there's no reason for them to not win the first game against England and win their pool. And then they can just wait for whoever comes out of Pool C, who my hot take, and I think I'm even going to put a bit of money on this, is I'm going for Argentina, Samoa, Fiji, and Georgia as the quarterfinalists from the Pool C side of the draw. So, yeah, we've just lost Shaun for the rest of the pod. Let me just quickly round up the rest of the results from the weekend. We had Georgia losing 33-6 to Scotland. They're leading 6-0 at halftime, which was great. And they were really just keeping parity with Scotland in all facets of the game in the first half. And their defense was able to keep them out. And then the second half, yeah, we know how good second half Scotland is, and they just completely turned on everything else after that. I mean, Scotland made 757 meters and beat 31 defenders. A bit concerned about Georgia. They're the team I'm most concerned about in my Fiji, Georgia, Samoa take. I kind of, I think they may be a little bit off the boil compared to Fiji and Samoa, because they at least had the Pacific Nations Cup to work out their teams and everything. So I'm hoping that Georgia can get their best players back. I mean, Gogishashvili didn't even come off the bench on Saturday. Gogishvili also didn't play in this game. So we'll see if Georgia can get things together. My hope is that they will rediscover sort of the form that they had in beating Wales and Italy last season. So that's good for them. Scotland, I mean, yeah, they just need to make sure that they can double what they do in 40 minutes and 80 minutes. So that's going to be their challenge going forward. But a good hit out for them. Portugal just relatively narrowly lost to the Australian A team, 30 points to 17. And look, this wasn't just any Australian A team. The Australian A team had more caps than the Australian side that played France in the weekend. So this was as close to a test level game for Portugal, which I think will show for the opponents in Pool C that Portugal are no mugs. And I think they will give whoever they face in Pool C some troubles. Like, there's a real situation where Fiji beats Wales and Australia but lose to Portugal, or even Georgia could do that as well. So I think Portugal can, I can see them pulling off a shock result in the pool as well, or at least scaring someone for 60 minutes. So that's a good result for Portugal. And I mean, good hit out for the Wallabies as well. They'll be touring with the Barbarians, I think, for the next few weeks in Europe, and just keeping a stack of players available for Eddie Jones. Then finally, or before that, Italy beat Japan 42-21. We did mention earlier in the pod that it seemed like Japan can't kick anything right now. So, I mean, they scored 3 tries and Italy, I think, scored 6. But with their kicking stats, they had 2 out of 6 kicks where Italy had 7 out of 8, and that was probably the losing of that game. Italy's in great attacking form at the moment. Ange Capuozzo is playing some great rugby, created a really good try. He's linked up well with Monty Ioane, and I like the balance of the back three when Tommaso Allen's playing 15 instead of Capuozzo. So I would go forward with that and just have that balance in the back three, because you need a bit of that kicking and running game that they can bring. And it's just a matter of, if Italy can, be as consistent as possible, like, they're also a forgotten team in terms of teams that can make a scare. And Pool A isn't a real foregone conclusion. There's Italy has scared New Zealand in the last, 2 years ago, and they have given France games in the Six Nations as well. So they just need to do the business against Namibia and Uruguay, and they at least have a chance to put their names in the hat. Finally, let's end off with Australia versus France. Australia did well, especially in the first half. They really were competitive, but they also were a story of a lack of goal kicking. They were they got 1 out of 5 kicks in, and they weren't able to keep up with Australia. I mean, with France, and as they built up the lead. And I mean, with Thomas Ramos and Melvin Jaminet kicking, like, they're not going to give you too many chances if you do that as well. But for me, this was the best of the warm-up games for France, because they just were able to ease into second, third, and fourth gear when they needed to in this game. So they started a bit rough. It wasn't going off in the first half, but as they grew into the game, as they really put Australia under pressure, like, it was quite easy from there, and they were able to win the second half quite convincingly. So I think France are pretty much ready, even though they played at about 60-70% of their capacity. They'll obviously be quite confident in their chances against New Zealand in that first game. All of their players looking like, or the players that they're available are looking like they're playing in good form. Great game from Jonathan Dante. Amazing try from Damien Pinot. Antoine Dupont and Thomas Ramos are pulling off crazy stuff. Jalibert played really well at 10. It's just now a matter of if they can just fix a few things. The scrum wasn't as good as it usually could be. I think they are struggling without Cyril Bay. Jean-Baptiste Gros didn't really have maybe the game that he wanted to up front. And we just have to see if they can just get those things sorted. And yeah, they'll have obviously as good a chance as anyone to win the World Cup. And at least in my books, I think France are still the favorites for the World Cup, even though they've sunk to number 3 in the world rankings in these last weekend of games. So I think we're at a point now where, we've seen everyone play at least once in this warm-up cycle. And yeah, I think the hot teams at the moment to finish off are South Africa can consider themselves hot, France are hot, Ireland are kind of lukewarm at the moment. They haven't really hit their straps in any of their warm-up games. Scotland are hot as well. Fiji and Samoa can consider themselves hot. And then the not category, obviously, the 3 terrible brothers of England, Wales, and Australia. New Zealand, probably mostly hot, but they didn't obviously have a good game in their last game. Japan didn't really do too well. And yeah, we'll see now what happens in the big dance. So I think we can end the podcast off here. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Please follow us on our social media pages at Rugby Bits, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well, to see any updates that we have, and just sharing the rugby news around the world. And also, I think we do have our top 50 players from this World Cup cycle article that you can still read and still discuss as well. And agree and disagree. What we did there is that we ranked the 3 best players in each position and then picked 5 wild cards, and this was based on their form from the end of the Rugby World Cup in 2019 up until now. And then we ranked the best players in each position based on their form and performances, or their performances in the last 4 years. So that was a great exercise. We made a lot of friends in Scotland who all agreed with our rankings there. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have a lot of preview content for the World Cup coming up. We're going to try to do a few pool previews and just to go into some of the teams in a bit more detail. And yeah, we'll hopefully make a few predictions as to what we think this World Cup will be. We are in for such amazing rugby coming up, and I'm so excited. And everyone in rugby is so excited that we will be doing this all together. Hope you can listen to the next podcast. Please follow us on in your preferred podcast platform. Like and share with the podcast with everyone else. And please make sure you drop a rating and some comments as well. That will also help us to go up the rankings. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you soon.